Bye, X-Men First Class. You're no longer my favorite X-Men movie. That's right. As of seeing X-Men Days of Future Past, First Class is no longer my favorite X-Men movie. But let's talk about why. X-Men Days of Future Past is the 7th X-Men movie and features the return of Bryan Singer, back to direct the X-Men franchise after X2 in 2003. This is based off of Chris Claremont's famous story of the same name, Days of Future Past. And the movie basically opens up with a post-apocalyptic future, where humans and mutants are almost pretty much on the verge of extinction due to the Sentinels, these giant robots that were designed to be mutant hunters, but eventually grew the ability to hunt down all human and mutant life on Earth. A small band of mutant refugees led by Professor X and Magneto, played once again by Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen respectively, come up with a plan to try to change the future and prevent this Sentinel apocalypse from ever happening. Through the powers of Kitty Pryde, played once again by Ellen Page, they send the conscience of Wolverine, played again by Hugh Jackman, to go back into the 70s and basically convince a young Professor X and Magneto, played once again by James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender respectively, to stop Mystique from setting this war into motion with an action that she is responsible for. For those who haven't read the comic or seen the movie, I won't go into the exact details, but basically it's a time travel movie. When it comes to the X-Men movies, I've been very, very impressed at how Fox has really come around into restoring the franchise after X-Men 3 and especially X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I've talked about that movie enough. I felt that last summer's The Wolverine, which I reviewed, it was a fun, well-made superhero movie, even if the climax was a little cheesy. And I really loved X-Men First Class from 2011. And as the intro stated, Days of Future Past is now my favorite X-Men movie. Yep. This movie really does prove that superhero movies can be great movies aside from being based off comic books. I mean, today we have films like The Avengers, The Dark Knight, and the first Iron Man, but I'm willing to bet that some people out there have forgotten that this all started with X-Men. Bryan Singer's X-Men from 2000 is the reason why all of these movies exist, and it basically set the blueprint for how to make a good comic book movie, which some movies follow, other movies just throw away and make a really bad comic book movie. But with X-Men Days of Future Past, Bryan Singer has directed the single best Marvel movie that is not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, I absolutely love this movie. I especially love the opening sequence. It reminds me of all of the future sequences from the first two Terminator movies, and the fact that it's post-apocalyptic. You're being introduced to some new characters that we haven't seen in the past X-Men movies, and yet you feel something for them when it's an opening fight between mutants and the future Sentinels, basically working together to fight off the Sentinels and their consequences. Stuff that happens, I felt emotional for, even if there were characters in the movie I had no idea who they were, and they weren't even featured in past X-Men movies. Sentinels themselves are pretty scary. I mean, whenever they're around, you have a sense of dread. You feel for the characters, and you want them to succeed or get out of their way. The action sequences are amazing, and the special effects are the best special effects the X-Men films have to date. And the performances are really good from the cast that's presented here. I mean, Hugh Jackman really needs no mention because he's playing Wolverine. He's played Wolverine for 6 movies, counting this one, and he is damn good in 5 of those movies. More of the acting praise for me goes to the 3 returning cast members from First Class: Jennifer Lawrence, Michael Fassbender, and James McAvoy. For Jennifer Lawrence, I've always loved her as Mystique more than I have Katniss. I mean, she brings a real depth to that character, and in this movie, she really brings a depth to the point where she's not Magneto's henchwoman. She can hold her own, and you can even see things from her point of view, even though she's the one who basically ruins the entire Earth's future. Michael Fassbender really does come into play as the evil Magneto, where you can kind of see his perspective from First Class. Here, he is just pure evil. He has become full Magneto, and he is awesome. And then James McAvoy is great once again as the young Professor X, whose life has basically gone in a crapper, and he's basically lost hope, where he really needs to become into his own, become the authoritative Professor X, and help save the future of humanity and mutant kind. One of the biggest surprises for me was how Quicksilver was handled. I may have mentioned this in my trailer review for one of the trailers for this movie, but I didn't like the fact that they just put Quicksilver into this movie, and his clothes didn't look right. That silver jacket looked so ridiculous, and those goggles with the silver hair just didn't really appeal to me. I can eat my words now because he is one of the best parts of the movie. But unfortunately, he's not in the movie for that long, which, I mean, proves my theory that he was kind of thrown in response to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch being in Age of Ultron. But he was actually really good in the movie. And he probably has the best scene in the movie in terms of an action sequence. I mean, it is awesome. I mean, this Quicksilver is awesome. And it really means that Joss Whedon and Aaron Taylor Johnson need to step up their game. There is really only one problem I have with this movie, and I even hate saying this because it's not really something the movie did, at least from my perspective, but my problem with this movie is, where exactly does this fit into the continuity? At this point in the franchise, the X-Men movies from First Class to Days of Future Past have slowly made X-Men Origins Wolverine non-canon. But I'm still trying to figure out where this lies in the first two movies, and if Brett Ratner's The Last Stand is really non-canon. I mean, it certainly feels like that since the Patrick Stewart Professor X is still around. But I don't think they really do much explaining for that. But I mean, not to get fully into it. That's my big issue. It's just more of a confusion of where and how does this lie in with the continuity of the rest of the series. Other things that I have are, at this point, pretty much nitpicks. I mean, Quicksilver not being in the movie for long enough, and Halle Berry is still not very good as Storm. I mean, even though she was never that good in the first three movies, that should be a bigger complaint, but honestly, she's not in the movie that much. She's in it less than Quicksilver is, so I can't be too harsh on Halle Berry this time around. And in the end, Days of Future Past is not only an amazing X-Men movie, but a really good movie, period. The comedy works when it needs to work, it's got some fantastic action sequences, and it's also very dramatic in some places. I like this movie slightly less than Captain America and the Winter Soldier because I identify more with Captain America than I do with any of the X-Men. But this is hands down the single best Marvel movie that does not take place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even though I had some reservations about the trailers and some of the advertising, I went into this movie expecting it to be the X-Men equivalent of the Avengers. And I got just that. Get off your ass and go see it now. I mean, if this was the last X-Men movie ever made, I would be satisfied with it. But regardless, they are still going to keep making X-Men movies, and I'm looking forward to this franchise's future more than I ever was. So thank you, Bryan Singer, for making the single best Marvel movie that's not in the Avengers franchise and restoring balance back to the X-Men franchise. And that's my review for X-Men Days of Future Past. Leave a comment, tell me what you thought of the movie, subscribe to my channel for more stuff in the future. You can check out my other channel, AlexG8462. You can find links to my Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, and Instagram accounts on this YouTube page. Go check me out on letterboxd.com, letterboxd.com, under the name The Real Mr. Robinson. Share me with your friends and tell them about me, and remember to know it before you see it. This has been The Cinema with Mr. Robinson, and I'll see you guys later.